In a small Texas diner, a quiet battle unfolds every Tuesday. A battle not fought with guns but with words sharp enough to cut. Kesha Johnson, a waitress marked by scars and silence, endures cruel insults from a group of arrogant men who see only her surface. But beneath those scars lies a story of survival, strength, and secrets they could never imagine. What they don't realize is that every cruel word only fuels a silent power, one that is about to rewrite their fate and reveal the true meaning of courage. This is a story you won't forget. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps give light to voices that deserve to be seen and heard. A swarm of laughs erupted in Ray's diner when Brett Davidson slammed his palm on the Formica table so hard his coffee cups danced. "Look who showed up, Freddy Krueger himself," he roared, eyes gleaming. "Monster, bring more coffee, but try not to drip with those burnt hands." His cronies guffawed, pointing and jeering at Kesha Johnson's scarred fingers, as if her pain were their Tuesday entertainment. Yet Kesha's grip on the coffee pot never wavered. Under the harsh fluorescent glow, her white uniform looked as pristine as her posture. Tall, unbowed. At 34, she'd endured horrors they could scarcely imagine. These barbs were mere sparks. Each cruel whisper, ghetto fire, crack lab accident, domestic violence, only stoked a fierce calm in her chest. She catalogued every jeer, every name, imprinting them like coordinates in her mind. When Davidson sneered, "Explain your scars, accident or lesson learned?" Kesha met his glare with eyes older than her years. For a heartbeat her face flickered with steel, the look of someone who had stared death in the trenches and refused its claim. Then, measured as a surgeon's incision, she answered, "Work." A single word that hung in the air heavier than any insult. Brett leaned back, contempt curling his lip. "What kind of work? Barbecue joint? Dry cleaners?" he taunted, but his laughter faltered. Something in Kesha's stillness, a latent menace, pulled at the edges of his bravado. Across the room, James Wright, a traveler nursing a black Americano, sat frozen. He'd seen that posture before, the soldier's stance, weight shifting like a coiled spring. Kesha paused in her clearing, hands resting gently at her sides, palms facing outward as if weighing threats. "People like me," she murmured, almost to herself. Her voice was soft, yet it carried the authority of command. Davidson's smirk slipped. He glanced around, suddenly aware of the diner's silence. Even the manager, Tony, who'd known Kesha as the ever-steady waitress for 2 years, stopped mid-step at the kitchen door. Then came the revelation. When Kesha bent to retrieve a fallen napkin, her sleeve rode back, revealing the faded tip of a military award ribbon and the partial letters of her unit tattoo. To anyone else it might have looked like a random marking, but to James, who'd served alongside her in the 101st Airborne, it was unmistakable. Davidson's bravado cracked. "So, what's this? Manual labor?" he spat, voice thin. Kesha straightened, the ghost of a knowing smile lifting one corner of her mouth. "Manual labor," she echoed, "like carrying wounded soldiers 3 meters under enemy fire." Her tone was measured, but thunder rolled in its wake. A hush fell. Customers edged away. Brett's gang sat slack-jawed. James rose, heart pounding, as recognition flooded him. Kesha's scars had been earned on distant battlefields, not in some back-alley blaze. And now, in this humble Texas diner, the waitress they mocked stood revealed as a warrior whose calm was forged in fire. Davidson opened his mouth and found no words. Casey straightened her uniform, gathered her pot and towels, and walked away, each step echoing the truth that no amount of cruelty could ever burn out the soul of someone who'd already survived hell and carried its lessons forward. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps give light to voices that deserve to be seen and heard. The air grew heavy as Brett Davidson leaned back, swaying slightly, his swagger fueled by cheap bravado. I bet you didn't even finish high school, he slurred, voice thick with contempt. Those scars? Street fight, right? People like you always land in trouble. But something in Kesha's gaze shifted, the faint spring of a storm coiling behind her calm veneer. James Wright, watching from a corner booth, recognized that look instantly, the resolve of someone who'd drawn a hard line in the sand and vowed never to retreat. Street fighting, Kesha repeated, voice quiet but edged with iron. A wry, humorless smile curved her lips. Funny how you assume the worst. You never consider that maybe these scars are earned by something noble? Davidson bellowed a derisive laugh. Noble? You sling coffee at a roadside joint. What nobility is there in that? With deliberate grace, Keshka closed the distance to his table. She hovered just out of reach, every movement precise. Here's the difference between you and me, she whispered, so low the others had to lean in. You judge by what you see. I measure people by what I know they're capable of when no one's watching. A hush fell as Davidson's grin cracked beneath the weight of her words. His throat bobbed with a swallow he didn't want to make. He managed stiffly, Are you threatening me? Threatening? Kesha straightened, slipping back into her professional calm. Not at all. I'm pointing out a fact. Underestimating someone like me isn't wise, and once you realize your mistake, it's usually too late. Across the diner, James's hand tightened around his coffee cup. 15 years of service had trained him to spot veterans hiding in plain sight, and Kesha bore every hallmark. Her posture, her measured breathing, even the ease with which she catalogued threats. Each detail spoke volumes. Brett Davidson, undeterred, whipped out his phone. Everyone look, he crowed. Here's Monster, serving us coffee. Burned face and all, he panned the camera, the flash illuminating Kesha's expression. Instead of flinching, she turned fully, meeting the lens with a cold, steady smile, the smile of someone who'd decided that the moment for retaliation had arrived. Keep recording, she said, voice calm as midnight. You'll want this for posterity. Davidson's laughter rang hollow. See? She loves the spotlight. Bet she's got an OnlyFans for burn fetishists. James saw the tactical analysis in her eyes, the way she assessed Davidson's stance and calculated angles. Kesha drifted closer, unhurried. Actually, she murmured, I have a lot of experience with cameras. Intrigued, Davidson gestured for more. Oh yeah, do tell. She paused, fingertips brushing a cup on the table. I've been filmed receiving military medals. For saving lives under fire, for bravery in combat. For a moment, Davidson hesitated, then roared, Sure, and I'm General Washington. But murmurs rose at other tables. Patrons exchanged glances, noting her precise vocabulary, the way she invoked medals and combat with intimate authority. Doubt began to ripple through the room. Keep recording, Kesha prompted. By the way, what's your full name? When this goes viral, we'll want to know the source. Mitchell and Associates, Davidson crowed, puffing out his chest. Look it up. Mitchell and Associates, Kesha repeated thoughtfully, filing the name away. And what do you do there? Business consulting. We help companies shed problem employees. So they conscripted her, this unimposing waitress, as their audience each week, never realizing she was absorbing every slanderous detail. Names, contracts, dubious deals, discriminatory firings. James watched her mind at work, a silent processor plotting invisible strategies. Tony gave a slight nod toward Tony, the restaurant manager who lingered nervously at the kitchen door. Tony, she called softly, could you come here? Tony emerged, concern etched on his face. Kesha addressed him with unshakable composure. Mr. Mitchell of Mitchell and Associates is voluntarily recording my image and making comments about my appearance. I'd appreciate if you witness this. Tony blinked, uncertain. Sure. Kesha glanced back at James. Thank you for stepping forward, she said, voice warm but firm. Perhaps we can talk more after my shift. Davidson bristled. Stop playing the victim. You're just a washed-up waitress nobody wants. Kesha's lips curved into a serene smile. I'm just a waitress, she agreed softly. Someone you consider invisible, harmless. She stepped back, head held high. But an invisible person who listens can learn a lot, especially when the same group gathers at the same table week after week. A tremor passed through Mitchell's bravado. His video wavered. Around him, the diner's patrons were no longer spectators. They were witnesses. And in that moment, Mitchell realized, every insult, every casual confession had been documented by the one person he presumed powerless. Kesha picked up her coffee pot, glancing once more at Davidson. Go on, she invited quietly. Finish your video. I'm sure your clients would love to see how you treat people. She swept away toward the counter, her uniform crisp, her bearing unbroken. James released his breath. James saw the precise moment when Davidson's swagger began to fracture, replaced by a flicker of doubt. And just as clearly, he witnessed Kesha's subtle shift, the moment she decided she had gathered enough ammunition for now. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure as always, Kesh said, tucking her pen into the pocket of her apron. See you next Tuesday, or maybe not. As she walked away, James realized he had just observed the opening salvo of a carefully planned campaign. Kesha wasn't merely a veteran struggling to adapt. She was a seasoned strategist, transforming months of humiliation into a powerful weapon in a battle Davidson hadn't even realized had begun. For a long moment it seemed everyone thought Kesha's silence meant broken spirit, but those who understand true military strength know it thrives in the quiet, nurtured by patience, precision, and the fierce knowledge that the best revenge is the kind the enemy never sees coming. Davidson's phone began to buzz insistently. The caller ID flashed Michael Stevens, his biggest corporate client. He answered with a smug grin, the camera still rolling. Davidson, you need to explain yourself. I've just received some very disturbing information about your company. What are you talking about, Michael? Davidson scoffed, glancing at Kesha like she was some punchline. About the way we handle employee terminations? Business as usual? Kesha approached the table again, voice cool and steady. Mr. Stevens, is that right? Your company's name came up here multiple times. Something about cleaning the payroll of undesirable elements? Davidson paled. How do you— 3 months ago, Kesha continued, you explained in detail how you helped Mr. Stevens fire black employees under the guise of restructuring. You said the trick was to fabricate retroactive performance reviews so discrimination couldn't be proven. That's a lie, Davidson shouted. Kesha smiled, serene. Tony, could you bring me my phone? The one with the recording app I've been using for the past 6 months? The restaurant fell into a heavy silence. Davidson's confident footing vanished beneath him. Texas is a one-party consent state, Kesha reminded him quietly. Every Tuesday for 6 months I recorded your admissions of discriminatory practice while you thought you were speaking to a mere waitress. Tony returned with the phone. Kesha played the recording, and Davidson's voice echoed through the room. The secret is never to put race on paper. Document late arrivals, productivity, cultural fit. Davidson lunged for the phone, but James stepped in firmly. I wouldn't do that. Kesha pressed on. 6 months of confessions, client names, tactics, payment amounts, all clear as day. Suddenly, Davidson's phone rang again, this time his wife. What the hell is going on? She demanded. My sister just sent me a video from Instagram of you humiliating a war veteran. Kesha raised an eyebrow. Oh, I forgot to mention. I posted that video, along with some details about my military background you never bothered to learn. Davidson's hands trembled as he opened Instagram. The video had already racked up thousands of views. The description read, Mitchell and Associates CEO humiliates decorated war veteran Sergeant Kesha Johnson, who served 3 tours in Iraq and saved dozens of American lives. No, this will ruin everything, he muttered. There's more, Kes said, pulling up a folder on her phone. Over the past 3 months, I've investigated every questionable contract, unreported payment, and connection your company has to firms under federal investigation. Standing tall, commanding the room's full attention, she continued, "Those recordings have been sent to the Department of Labor, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and 3 offices specializing in discrimination." Davidson tried to protest, but Kesha's voice was relentless. "The viral video ensures everyone will know who you really are. Your clients are already being contacted by civil rights groups." His phone exploded with calls, each ring another client canceling contracts. "Why didn't you say who you were from the start?" Davidson's voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. Kesh met him with unshakable dignity. "Because men like you need to learn respect isn't earned by uniforms. It's automatic, basic human decency." James stepped forward, extending his hand. "Sergeant Johnson, it's been an honor to witness this." As Davidson and Brett slunk away in utter defeat, Kesha turned to the silent diners. "And what about you?" she challenged. 6 months of watching this happen? How many other humiliations have you ignored?" As the truth settled like dust in the air, one thing was crystal clear. Davidson had picked the wrong person to humiliate, at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. Now, Kesha's true strength was unfolding, systematic justice delivered with the patience and precision of a seasoned war strategist. 6 months after that transformative day at Ray's Diner, Kesha Johnson was no longer just a waitress surviving in silence. Her story spread nationwide, turning her into a respected advocate for veterans' rights and victims of workplace discrimination. The diner itself became a pilgrimage site for veterans across the country. Tony, the manager, proudly created a hero's wall, Kesha's photo in uniform hanging center stage among dozens of local veterans finally empowered to share their stories. "It's funny," Kesha remarked to James during one of their weekly meetings, her eyes reflecting quiet pride. "I spent 3 years hiding who I was. And now, I can't hide it even if I wanted to." James smiled, watching the atmosphere around them shift completely, from wary silence to warm respect. "Sometimes," he mused, "we need to be broken before we discover just how strong we really are." Meanwhile, Davidson Mitchell was living a nightmare that seemed endless. Mitchell and Associates had shuttered after losing every major client. The viral video exposing him had been viewed by more than 10 million people, forever linking his name with discrimination and corporate failure. His wife had filed for divorce, taking half of their remaining assets in the settlement. "He called me last week," Kesh told James as she served coffee to a table of veterans who had driven 200 miles just to meet her, apologizing, begging me to take the recordings down. "And what did you say?" "Some lessons," she smiled, "need to be permanent to be effective." The federal investigation Kesha's recording sparked revealed a web of discrimination far larger than anyone expected. 12 companies that had been clients of Mitchell and Associates now faced lawsuits. Davidson was cooperating desperately with authorities, hoping to reduce his sentence. Brett, the accountant, lost his professional license and now worked at a convenience store across town. Whenever someone recognized him from the viral video, he lowered his head and quietly changed aisles, weighed down by the shame his own cruel words had created. What moved Kesha most was how her community had changed. Customers who once looked away now greeted her warmly, some apologizing for their silence. The elderly woman who always sat at the corner table became one of Kesha's loudest champions, telling anyone who would listen about their local hero. "You know what I've learned?" Kesha shared during a national podcast on veterans' rights. "Respect shouldn't be something you have to earn through medals or uniforms. It should be automatic, universal human dignity." James had made the city his home, opening a consulting business to help veterans transition to civilian life. Together, he and Kesha built a strong partnership, guiding former service members through corporate challenges. The ironic thing, James reflected during one conversation, is that Davidson tried to use discrimination to feel superior and ended up revealing his own moral bankruptcy to the entire world. Kesha's story inspired legislative changes in 3 states, including new workplace protections for veterans. She testified before congressional committees, her calm but powerful words echoing through the halls of Washington. Tony promoted her to assistant manager, but Kesha split her time between the diner and consulting for organizations seeking to improve diversity and inclusion. Ironically, many of these were former clients of Mitchell & Associates, desperate to repair tarnished reputations. "The best revenge," Kesha said during a veterans convention speech, "is not to destroy those who hurt you. It's to build something greater than they could ever imagine, and to do it with such class that they are forced to respect what they once tried to destroy." Davidson occasionally drove through town, no longer flaunting a BMW but a worn used car. On one such trip, he stopped at the diner, not to provoke, but to plead for second chances. Kesha greeted him with the same professional courtesy she always had, serving coffee, taking his order, voice steady and calm. When he tried to apologize again, she simply said, "Mr. Mitchell, what happened between us was not a misunderstanding. It was a revelation of character, yours and mine." The transformation was complete. The woman who once silently endured humiliation was now sought after by companies, universities, and government organizations to share her story of leadership, resilience, and justice. Her scars, once symbols of shame, had become beacons of courage and sacrifice, inspiring thousands. "If this story of transformation and justice has touched your heart," Kesha said during her latest televised interview, "remember this. We all have the power to choose how we respond to injustice. We can bow down, or we can use our inner strength to rewrite our narrative." The lesson was clear. Davidson tried to destroy Kesha, but in the end he destroyed himself. True revenge, Kesha learned, isn't about repaying harm. It's about achieving a success so profound that your enemies are forced to confront their own moral mediocrity. Thank you for watching this story of courage and resilience. In a world that often feels divided, it's kindness and compassion that remind us of our shared humanity. Every small act of justice, every quiet moment of understanding, has the power to change lives in ways we can't always see. If this story touched your heart, please consider sharing it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want to be part of more stories that uplift and inspire, subscribe and join our Kind Light community. Remember, as the poet once said, "The smallest light shines brightest in the darkest night."